no, just keep playing the music. You know, Nile Rodgers, the man behind some of the... David Bowie and Madonna tells us why he decided to write about his tough childhood. That is so cruel. Wasn't that cruel? Right, got your disco shoes ready?
Oh.
Here we go. Nile Rodgers.
Don't laugh. That's one of my best efforts.
Here he is.
You know what this is?
I can't do that.
We could all link up and just try and do that one.
Shall we go?
Yes,
we go. Nile Rodgers, he said for the fourth time, first found fame in the 70s with his band Chic, and went on to produce a string of hits for artists from Madonna, David Bowie, Diana Ross, and Mick Jagger.
We're looking back through his amazing life in just a moment. We're going to remind ourselves first,
Can we boogie? Can we boogie?
of some of his work. Here it is.
I said upside down, you're turning me, you're giving love instinctively, round and round, you're turning me.
Put on your red shoes and dance the blues.
Like a virgin, hey, touch for the very first time. Like a virgin.
One boy, never lived it. One boy, never chose his way. One boy, never closed your eyes. One boy's always.
Sweetheart family. I got all my sisters with me. Sweetheart family. Get up, everybody, sing.
Oh,
Ah.
welcome to the program.
Thank you
We
very much.
love that. And such disparate songs in a way. I mean, they're so different when you're writing for other people. We'll get on to your life story in just a moment, but just hearing your work, how do you do that? How do you craft something for
You
Madonna
are so
and David
smart.
Bowie?
I actually only work for specific individuals. I'm not the type of songwriter that just writes a song and then hands it off to different people and says, will you please take this song? I actually only do work by commission, which is very bizarre. It's not the normal type of songwriter. In other words, before I got the job with Sister Slade, there was no We Are
So
Family.
Bowie came to you and said, I want to do an album, and it was Let's Dance.
Indeed. What happened was he and I met at an after-hours club just, in passing. And we started chatting, and we both were, honestly, we were enthralled with each other. And before we wrote a note of music, what we did was research and just started hanging out, and I started to get into his brain and vice versa. Actually, it's not much room in here, but anyway, we had a clear picture and a clear vision, and then we started to compose and put it all together.
Yeah, that was a groundbreaking album, though, wasn't it?
China
Fantastic
Girl.
record.
You did China Girl, isn't it?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Terrific. And with other artists, then, do they come to you and say, now, like Duran Duran, do they come to you and say, now, we want you to deliver us some product, or?
And they say it in those words exactly. Basically, when I met the Duran guys, they were opening for Blondie, and we were sort of in the Mutual Admiration Society, but we hadn't met yet. I met them at the Blondie gig. They had heard this record I had done by In Excess called Original Sin, and Simon Le Bon was freaky over that song. We got together. I did their first record with them, which wound up being their biggest record, was The Reflex.
Yeah.
And then we went on to do other records together.
What a gig that must have been. Duran Duran and Blondie. Just take you back to your life. Well, there are so many great hits that you've done and written with so many amazing people, and you did a freak. But you look at your life and reading your book, and you think, how on earth did you get to become so successful? Because you start the book off at the beginning by saying your family, drugs, crime, and love were the gravy that kept us all together. Your mother and your stepfather were junkies.
Yes.
Well, how do you pull yourself out of that to become a successful one?
They were, for a long period of my childhood, they were quite functional. I mean, my stepfather is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man. My mom is a real intellectual. She's great. And they did very well until I was around 8.5, 9 years old. But by that time, I learned to read at a very early age. I was quite self-sufficient, and I really took care of myself. I mean, when your parents are junkies, you have to take care of yourself. I'm getting all choked up. I love my family. I mean, my parents are great.
And then music was your big thing. You
Was
got a
my
job.
savior.
Yeah, you got a job in the band with the band in Sesame Street.
My first job out of high school was with Sesame Street. I went from Sesame Street to the Apollo Theater, and during those years, I was able to get the training to just jump from one artist to the
Then
next.
ended up jamming with Jimi Hendrix. I mean, what a leap that is. The band in Sesame Street.
You got the chronology a little
it's the wrong way
backwards.
around.
Hendrix was earlier.
Okay.
Hendrix I met when he was building the studio in New York called Electric Lady, and he was hanging around in the Village, which is where I used to live. And in those days, big stars, rock stars especially, were very accessible. I remember meeting Jethro Tull, Jeff Beck, Hendrix. All of those people were in the Village because that's where all the cool clubs were. And to jam with Hendrix, even though it sounds super romantic, we almost didn't notice he was there until we looked up and went, "Oh wow, look, there's Jimmy."
Yeah.
It really was that nonchalant and that cool.
And your love of music came from, I mean, you're very affectionate towards your father and your mother and your stepdad as well. You can see there's a lot of love there. And they love music too. But also you had asthma, didn't you? And so when you were in hospital,
Yes.
you were singing. You were learning to trying to write stuff down.
I was born very sickly, and I was put in convalescent homes when I was really, really young. And what happened is that they had those old-fashioned classrooms where you learned, instead of sitting on my hands, I was doing what the other kids were doing. So even though I was just 5 years old, I learned to read at the level of an 8th or 9th grader.
Right.
That is when I was 5, 6 years old.
And your big leap forward was your work with Bernard Edwards and with
Changed my
Chic,
life.
of course. Let's have a look at. Come on.
Yeah,
Let's have a look at the. Here we go.
Here we go.
All that pressure got you down. Has your head spinning all around. Feel the rhythm, check the rhyme. Come on along and have a real good time. Night and day, stopping at your boy. Now we're free. Oh, what a joy. Just come on down to the fifth floor.
And that was it. The look. Oh, you were doing it.
Do
You
the
were doing
freak.
it.
Do the freak.
Okay.
Except you got a touch.
But this is the style of the band was inspired by a visit that you made with your girlfriend at the time to see Roxy music.
Yeah,
Is that right?
that's it. What happened was I was stranded in London. The American embassy was closed for the weekend. My passport had been stolen. So she convinced me to go see this band that she loved called Roxy Music, and they were playing at a joint called the Roxy Theater. And when I got there, I thought, boy, this was the first time I had seen a totally immersive artistic experience with music. And the group called Roxy playing at the Roxy, and their audience was beautiful, and they were beautiful, and I went, man, this is a cool idea. And I said to Bernard, what if we did the black version of that? What would that look like? And then our keyboard player was a fan of the band Kiss, and we took the anonymity of Kiss and the fashion element of Roxy, we fused it together and came up with Chic.
Wow.
It sounds crazy, but
It works.
to a band, that's completely
No, it
logical.
works. It definitely works. So you're on tour at the moment, you're saying? Or
Yeah, I'm on tour with Seal and this gentleman John Miles, who's amazing. He says he watches you guys every day. He said, "Now, when you're sitting there with Sean, please, now, I'm going to score brownie points now." He said, "Please tell Sean that I watch her every single morning."
Oh.
Yeah. And John Miles is incredibly talented.
That's
so
amazing.
Yeah.
That's it. Now John's going to play on every Chic song.
That's fantastic. I've got to go. Yeah.
You said you led a clean life in your early life, but then there were disasters later in life and drug addiction in your own part, and we were lucky to have you because you said you died how many times in one night?
8 times in one night. My heart stopped 8 times. And in fact, the final time, they were actually filling out the death certificate because they had done everything that they thought was humanly possible. And my heart started going just by itself. And the doctor said to the orderly who discovered that my heart had restarted, he said, "What do you think we should do?" And he just looked at me and said, "Obviously nothing." And they wheeled me out and brought in the next patient. They had been trying over and over and over again, and my heart just kept flatlining over just one right after the next, and literally 8 times. The doctor stuck around to tell me, please stop taking drugs, and I felt guilty, and I listened to him, and I was thankful to the staff, and I stopped for about 2 weeks. I didn't finally stop until 1994. I went to Madonna's birthday party down in Miami Beach, and I don't remember a thing that happened that night, but everybody told me my behavior was reprehensible, and I'm a really nice guy, so I was too embarrassed to ever want to live that. Yeah, that was it.
Well, we're glad we've still got you with us.
Well, if I got 1 second, so the funny part of that story was on my way home, like, so I'm totally inebriated, but I'm sort of have it together, and I'm reading this magazine, and Keith Richards, who's a neighbor of mine in Connecticut, he says that he's going to give up drugs. And I read that, and I thought, my God, I know Keith well. If Keith can give it up, I'm giving it up. And then when I got out of rehab 8 months later, the first person that called me was Keith asking for a little hit of coke. And I said, no. I quit because of you, and now you're calling me asking me for coke. Are you out of your mind? But I never said anything. So I just said, well, I don't have any, Keith.
Yeah.
All right. Niall, thanks very much.
It's been so good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Say hello to John.
I will indeed. John Miles.
I'm on that tour. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
And Niall sort of